Hi, my name is Dr. Jack. It was 2004. I was invited by English Heritage to do a treasure trail around London to improve the Blue Plaques quota that they had. At the time, there was 15 Blue Plaques, 9 to Asian, people of Asian origin, and 6, or this was the 6th, to people of African descent. The person who unveiled the plaque that day was none other than the remarkable Darcus Howe. I'm very proud to say this is our 68th plaque, and we, thank you very much, and counting. We have no intention of stopping.
Darcus Howe was a key activist in many of the major movements, which I'm sure many of you here know about. An original Black Panther, the Mangrove 9 trial, the phenomenal court case which he won, Black People's Day of Action for the death of 13 young people in New Cross Fire and the Brixton uprisings. Race Today Journal he edited from this building, and his equally iconic wife, Leela Hussein Howe. It was at the center of the struggle for justice in Britain and changed the face of campaigning journalism. I would like to just stop here for a second to please give a warm applause to Leela Hassan Hussein.
There is a great significance to me and our history because of where I'm standing now. In between the plaques of two people that have had a great impact on my life. C.L.R. James taught me everything that I know about politics, and he was very proud to say so. I lived here. I moved up and down the stairs. And how I came to live here was because I came here as a refugee, and Darcus and Leela and the Race Today collective, they took me in and gave me refuge. And it was through them also that I managed to get a position at the Greater London Council that enabled me to come up with the Black History Month concept. I'm happy that Darcus has been duly honored. Darcus has been duly honored. And I want to play a devil's advocate. Let's think about Darcus and let's restore that spirit that made us who we are.
The Darcus of the 60s who came over, this 17-year-old young firebrand, legal scholar, who was some years later, in the early 70s, to put that legal training to use in the famous trial that was dramatized on TV just a few months ago. And then the guy who rallied together the people for the National Black People's Day of Action some years later, in 1981. I didn't know that Darcus. I was too young, and I was 200 miles away in Manchester, just cutting my teeth. But the Darcus I met was the Darcus of the Devil's Advocate. I'm the Devil's Advocate, and tonight I'm debating with Imran Khan, or Mark Tully, or Dr. Adebayo and Steve Pope, or Bernie Grant. He was fearless. He slayed all the sacred cows. And to me, this was somebody I thought, wow, how can this black man be on television and be so fearless and not be so buttoned up and not be nervous about what the majority of people might think of him? Because remember, back then, in the early 1990s, most of the people you saw on TV of African and Caribbean heritage were working on the news and were fairly buttoned up, doing a very professional job. But, you know, and this is no disrespect to them because I follow in their footsteps, with the likes of Sir Trevor MacDonald, Trevor Phillips and others, presenting the news, but in a very, very, very buttoned up way. To the point, I remember this, back in 1990, when the late Desmond Tutu was standing there with Trevor McDonald, and Nelson Mandela was about to be released, and Trevor was standing there saying, and very shortly he'll be walking out of the prison, and Desmond Tutu went, what's wrong with you? He's getting out, man! He's getting out! That energy was what I saw when I watched Darcus Howe, and I thought, this is really, really good.
The blue plaques play such a vital role in bringing to life and interpreting our local history and the resonance that local history has at a national scale as well. So I'm really grateful to Dr. Jak and the Nubian Jak Trust for the work that they do to install blue plaques to commemorate those people from the black community who are not and historically haven't been recognised for the contribution that they make. I, like Henry, I didn't know Darcus Howe in the 60s, but my recollection of Darcus Howe was of reading his writing, usually in the Guardian newspaper, as a young person in the 1990s, growing up also in the north of England, a long way away from Brixton. And what he did for me was to make it possible for people who did not have to struggle to understand something of what the struggle meant. And we know from Steve McQueen's work, we know there are loads of you here who knew Darcus personally, who knew exactly the depth of his work over many, many years, that the impact of his activism and the leadership that he showed within the community. But that was also important at a national level because he made the link between things that were happening that were not understood, that were not talked about, that were not reflected in our national dialogue, and he put them on the national stage. And that is how so much progress was made over time.
I run Brixton Advice Centre here. I'm not sure if people know, but Darcus and the centre go back a long way, back to the 70s, when we were in 167 Railton Road and Race Today were here in 165. Way back in the 70s, Darcus has been a friend to the centre and to the work that we've done all through that time. I remember meeting Darcus outside here one day when I had to give a speech, and I drafted a load of words and I'd struggled over it and thought, what am I going to say, how am I going to put this, how am I going to put it together? And I was telling Darcus about it. 10 minutes after speaking to Darcus, I screwed it up and I threw it away. And I went and I just did it off the cuff. And I think it was probably really rubbish as well, but there you go. But I did what Darcus said to me. What he said to me out here was something along the lines of, just speak from your heart and tell the truth, and people sooner or later will listen to you. So today I feel privileged to be here. I feel like I'm with giants, really, listening to some of the people who speak.
Okay, well, firstly, thank you. Thank you for braving the weather. When I saw the weather this morning, I thought, well, we'll get about 6 people and members of the family. So thank you so much for braving the rain and the cold and coming here today. CLR and Darcus, I think if anybody knows any of the history, were very, very close. And one of the reasons that Darcus formed the Race Today Collective, which was housed in this building, is because he was following the political understanding and wisdom of his great uncle CLR, who talked about building a small organisation around a magazine. So it's really fitting that we're unveiling the plaque to Darcus today on CLR's birthday. One of the things, as in the twilight of his years, when we would talk about his past, his achievements, his huge success, and sometimes his not such huge success, his concerns, his views of his family, I would ask him what he would consider his greatest achievements in public life. I have to say that in personal life, Darcus believed his greatest achievements were his children. But in public life, when we would talk about this, and he told me 2 things. Despite his huge success in broadcasting, despite his huge success as a national figure in terms of the media, he considered his greatest successes, his greatest achievements, I wouldn't say successes, achievements, were the Mangrove 9 trial and the building of the Race Today Collective. And he built a collective that was based in this building. And many of you might know the history, but some of you won't. And originally we squatted there where it says newspapers, magazines and confectionery. With the help of Olive Morris, we squatted 74 Shakespeare Road, broke through the inner door a few years later and spotted 165 Relton Road, and with the help of Ken Livingstone and Lambeth Council were able to develop it into a centre for really activism. And Darcus said to me that when he decided to build the collective, he wanted a mixture of intellectuals and activists, and that was very important to him. He wanted working class people as well as intellectuals to come together in an organisation so that they could learn from each other. He was very much against the idea of the intellectuals with their academic understanding leading ordinary people. He believed that we had experiences and understanding where we could govern and decide for ourselves what we wanted to do with our lives. And so here we were, based really from 74, although the collective base day started in 73, from 74 until 88. And this was the building. And on the ground floor here was where we had Race Today studios with Jean, who's here today, member of the collective. On the first floor was Darcus with the offices, and Darcus would sit near that window. And on the top floor, CLR James lived. And that really was what Darcus did. He built an institution. And he was very much of the view that we could build our own institutions. We could tell Britain, and at that time it is not the Britain that it was today. I lament when I hear many young people say things haven't changed, because believe you me, my generation, the generation just before me and just after me, will tell you that there's been a great deal of change in Britain. But when we were around, we were involved in struggles. Every day it was a struggle. And you will see from the plaque today that we did this for almost 16 years, meeting together regularly, discussing in this organisation. People would visit us. You could walk into Race Today at any time and meet Walter Rodney, the great Guyanese historian. You could, of course, meet Eric, who is here, our great friend Eric Huntley. You could meet Maurice Bishop, who had come to discuss the Grenada Revolution and what liberation in the Caribbean would be about. You could meet leaders from the South African strike and the anti-apartheid movement. And so this was an international hub as well as a national hub. And so when Adai Sebo and Patrick talk about this is really an important building, it really is an important building. And today, the fact that we can mark this with a plaque to Darcus, I think is really one of the most important days in the life of Black Britain and of Britain generally.
Yes.
I want to say also that now with the Black Lives Matter movement and the way young people, of course, approach things, Darcus is now being completely iconic. You know, he's an icon. Darcus is this great person, and then the language of which describes Darcus. And of course, for us in Race Day, and for many, I think for his children as well, it must be quite funny to sometimes hear this, because for many years, Darcus was completely in the wilderness. He was a thorn in the side of the establishment. He wanted no truck with the establishment. And so in many cases, people wanted Darcus just to shut up. They didn't want to hear this radical and revolutionary idea of we were masters and mistresses of our own destiny, and that we were not going to put up with the racism in this society, which was manifested in the media, by the police, by politicians, and throughout society. So now to hear the way he's venerated, for which I must say I'm very pleased about. I must say there were times when he was in the wilderness and it wasn't always easy. Whilst Darcus was in Race Today, he was arrested 5 times. He was and I'm really pleased, and I'm sure I've seen her, that Gareth is here. He's a great lawyer who was with Darcus through all those 5 arrests and helped with those campaigns. This building is important for lots of reasons. I haven't mentioned Linton. I understand Linton is isolating, but with Linton we were able to have a big cultural institution as well. And in the basement of this building we had something we called basement sessions, and we would invite poets, artists, dramatists, theatre people from all over the world to talk to us about art, to discuss the relevance of art, the way art was within the black community and how it could be developed. And that was equally important. So that when James Baldwin died in America, and it was a phone call to Maya Angelou to come over and be part of what we called ourselves then as Creation for Liberation, the artistic arm of Race Today, when we called her on the telephone and said to her, Maya, will you come over? Because she knew of Darcus and of Race Today, she just said, of course, I'll be there. And we organised a huge tribute to James Baldwin in Lambeth Town Hall. But I say that to give you some idea of the depth and the influence that Darcus had and Race Today had at that particular moment of history in Brixton and in Britain. I've talked about Darcus being in the wilderness. CLR was his great advisor. And after the Black People's Day of Action and the insurrections in Brixton, which other speakers have spoken about, the special branch and the police were very, very hot on Darcus. And the Times wrote an editorial in which they said Darcus Howe should be made to account for his movements for every single minute of where he was during the insurrection in Brixton. He was followed by special branch officers wherever he went with the New Cross campaign, and he got talking to them, and they followed him even to cricket. And Darcus spoke to them and said, "Why are you following me to cricket?" And they said, "Darcus, we have been told to follow you wherever you go. Not only in political meetings, we are following you." He discussed this with CLR, and CLR said, "The British state is after you now, Darcus, in a really big way, and it's time now for you to retreat." He didn't mean to say, don't do what you're doing, but that don't make the noise that you've been making, because really the state really will deal with you. And we know how the British state deals with people who they think need to be silenced. He would really, really be pleased for today, of course he would. But I think his real pleasure would be the fact that he's side by side with his great uncle CLR James. That I know he would be extremely, extremely chuffed about. Finally, I want to say this, and I think it's important, particularly in the way that, you know, I was not going to be political today, but particularly in the way that politics are being governed today. I think that Darcus Howe was one person that the black community absolutely knew that they could rely on him, that he would take forward their wishes, their desires, the fact that they required equal rights and justice, that we wanted the society to recognise that we were equal to them. His famous statement that there was not for one moment did he ever believe that what white people had said about black people, that we were inferior to them. Darcus translated that into his life in every single aspect, and his achievements can't be underestimated. I think the fact that many young people now take an interest, and of course that is through his biography, and one of the biographers is here, Paul, to the anthology that we've done. We've formed a small collective called the Darcus Howe Legacy Collective. One of our main aims, with the assistance of Columbia University, is to digitise Race Today, because people say to me, you know, we hear so much about Race Today, but we can't see it because it's in very few libraries. So that's one of the big pieces of work that we've been working on, and now successfully with Columbia. This year you will be able to see Race Today online. So that's something I'm very pleased with. So thank you once again. Thank you again to the organisers. And please remember him. Please always, if you do walk past here, just look up and see CLR and Darcus. And I know I said I don't like the word, but really, two icons, not only of Black Britain, but of Britain and the world. Darcus Howe and CLR.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Woo! Darcus Howe, civil rights activist, writer and broadcaster. Edited and published Race Today from this house, 1973 to 1988. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
I was on the demos for Mangrove, so for me this is really important. because we've still got the same fight as we had back then. A lot is changing, but a lot more needs to change.
I've been involved with the Black Cultural Archives for the last 40 years, and it's only been going for 40 years. And I just hope that people of Brixton and London understand the legacy that has been left by people like Darcus Howe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Why are we here? Because we hear glum, all sorts of things about our community. And today, this is it. This is humanity. This is rainbow people. This is not about black or white. This is about Darcus Howe's legacy. It don't matter your color. It matters who you are, what your soul is. And I come from healing, and I'm tired, and it's a bit wet and rainy, and I thought, no, I'm going to get here, and I got exactly what I needed. My soul is revived to go back to the fight. We're all on the coalface, but today this was about remembering those that went before, made the way. We are midgets standing on the shoulders of giants like Darcus Howe and Mr. C.R. James. God bless them, may they rest in eternal, gentle rest and peace.
I'm feeling alive. I'm very, very cold in my hands, but I'm warm in my heart because today the community came out, they mobilized. When I got up this morning, I saw the terrible weather. I thought, oh no, we're not going to get so many. But we had more people here today, 4 years after Darcus's death, than when the funeral cortege passed through here in April 2017. So the memory is still alive. Small acts, Mangrove, and everything that he did was summarized here today. And you can even feel it, and I'll be happy all day today. It's wonderful.
Well, he's, a radical community activist, and for me it's really important to be here to show up. He's someone that has given me so much inspiration, so much hope. His words are still a living testament and blueprint for us radical organisers ourselves, knowing how to work and take down the system, but also how we can oppose it. So I think for me, being able to see the plaque and to also be around so much wisdom. Today was full of wisdom, full of hope, but also full of radical imagination of thinking about how others have done things, but also how we can use it as our blueprint. So yeah, it was just here to give honour where honour is due. It's long overdue honour, so I'm thankful to be here and waiting for many more of our greats to have plaques, but we start with Darcus Howe.
It's great, but it's weird because obviously to me he's just my dad, but it makes me feel really proud and really happy to know that my dad impacted so many people, even for myself, like younger generations, like my nieces and nephews, and just other people hearing that they're studying stuff about my dad at uni and things like that. It's crazy to me because he's just dad. He's not Darcus Howe to me, he's dad.
Is the message getting through to the young people? Are we going to see some young Darcus Howes?
Yeah, I think the way in which black leadership is organised has changed dramatically. So I think there's less reliance on leadership and more reliance on collective action. So I think collectively, there's many organisations like BLAM, like the Black Curriculum, so many organisations that are doing the work in collectivity, and I think that's the most important thing.
Thank you, sister.
No problem.